What gives me strength? Years ago, I used to work an after-school program in the Bronx, talking about a community of black, brown, and working class people. Many of the families that we served were undocumented, and English was not their first language. My job was to run an afternoon program in which volunteers help children with their homework. One day, I got to work with a preschool girl of Mexican heritage. She was at risk of being held back a grade. Why? She refused to speak English. She spoke Spanish with me just fine. After we finished her homework, she wanted to play chess. She was smart. I grabbed the chess set and I was teaching her the names and the placement of the pieces. There was a brown side and a white side. I asked her to choose a side, and she said this to me, which will haunt me forever. She said that she chose white side because, quote, whites always win. I sat in a park after work in the Bronx, wondering of how to respond to a 6-year-old that tells you that. I thought a lot about colonization and imperialism, manifest destiny, the racist 19th century belief that the US has the right to expand through the continent, the American continent, because that was justified and inevitable, like Thanos, apparently. This was actually inspired by the 1884 racist Berlin Conference, where European powers divided Africa for themselves, kind of like you and your friends go and want to kill a cow, sacrifice a cow to feast on it, and you divide it. The Africans didn't get a say, neither did the cow. There is also the Mexican-American War, which is a weird name because it was a war between the US and Mexico, and the rest of the countries in America didn't have anything to do with it. But the US in the 1840s invaded Mexico and stole half of their land. In the end, I realized that this was so personal, because I realized that I still had some of the evil forces, evil ways of thinking like racism, because they are in the air that we breathe. They are inside of us. They are internalized very often. And apparently not even preschoolers are exempt of that. Many of the children that I work with in the Bronx refuse to speak their parents' languages. In that little girl, I saw my own inferiority complex, my internalized stigmas. I thought less of myself because I was experiencing poverty, housing insecurity, I was living with untreated mental health illness, and I was undocumented back then. That's why my strength comes from education. Most of the people in this country can't afford a $1,000 emergency expense. 63% of people in this country can't afford to buy a home as of the year 2024. More than 26,000 people in the US die every year as a result of not having health insurance. The bottom 80% of the US has only 7% of this nation's wealth. In that context, it is not my fault for experiencing housing insecurity, mental health issues, untreated, or poverty. That's a problem with the system. Some of the extreme wealth that exists in this country, most of us will never have access to it. And some of it was stolen from some of our countries. The wealth is also ours. And we have the right to be here and to fight for it. That's why there is no illegal people. Education gives me the strength to empower my people and to instill pride, confidence, and self-love. I'm not crazy. I was not going to try to explain all of that to a 6-year-old. We did, however, do an activity about Cinco de Mayo. That is not the US version of Cinco de Drinko, where some Americans shove tacos on their faces along with beer and tequila while engaging in cultural appropriation. We studied the Mexican victory over the French forces at the Battle of Puebla in May the 5th of 1862. We're talking about a colonized people defeating one of the most remarkable white colonizers' powers back then. My hope was to instill some pride, to contradict the narratives that children were exposed to, and to have that little girl believe the brown people can win too. I hope that when she grows up and she learns some of this information, it'll be as good for her as it has been for me. Thank you. Stay safe, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next one.